This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. These are the points. I'm Chris Bean, and joining me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to go over your conversation with Kevin Dunlap. Do you have any first impressions or key takeaways as we get started?
First impressions was impressive. I really enjoyed meeting with Kevin and hearing what Kevin had to say. I think I mentioned a couple times during our conversation, but I really appreciate how he recognizes a need and then tries to fill that need throughout his whole life. You know, he goes through his life and realizes, oh man, I wish I had this. Well, let me do this for other people. Or I wish this was different. Let me change this for other people. And so I appreciate that mentality of seeing a need and fulfilling that need. Not to mention, he very clearly is grounded in his values, and he has a clear why to what he's doing, which I think makes him more successful. And it's something that we can all benefit from learning about, is kind of rooting that in the center of our ambitions.
Yeah, I my first impression from him is Kevin is a go-getter. He is going to go and do the things, and really, I found like you said, his passion for educating other people to know that they can be a business owner, they can be an entrepreneur, and it's not some magical mystery thing. There are some preconceived notions that most everybody has, and you have to kind of understand that those ideas, and like you're not going to go in as a real estate agent and sell multi-million-dollar mansions on your first day. That just doesn't happen. So there has to be some pulling back and understanding of that. But I think that, as far as educating other people and giving them the opportunity to learn that so they can improve themselves is very helpful.
Well, it ties into his idea, of the win-win mentality, the winner's mentality, the winner's mindset, I think is what his book was called. And, if there's a way that you can help everyone win and everyone succeed and everyone do better, that should be your optimal plan. That should be the thing you strive for, is to help others while you're helping yourself, and put everyone in the best possible path for success in any area. And like you said, Kevin very much is a go-getter, and clear that his intentions are set on doing just that.
Yeah, that book was The Winner's Code, The Secret of a Winner's Mindset. I wrote it down. That was a good one. Speaking of books, I thought it was really interesting that at least two of his books are indeed workbooks. So the reader gets to not just get the information, but then has an opportunity to kind of apply that information in a systematic way to help them better understand that information, which is very helpful. And I think that, as kids, as we're learning things, which is primarily when we learn things as kids, those things, workbooks are all over the place. But as adults, we don't have workbooks. So I think that that's a unique idea that is very helpful to many people across whatever sector they're in.
I agree. It was interesting to hear him say that at the beginning, that his books, two of his books at least, are workbooks. And I think it is beneficial to have something where you can actually interact with it and engage with it. Because we talk about, not just learning something, but actually using it, or finding out what you think about it and finding out how it can apply in your life. But not only to hear him talk about having workbooks, but then later in the conversation hear how he himself approaches any kind of book that he's trying to learn from. He talked about reading the book and then going back and reading it again, but taking notes over the things that he found important, and reading the book as if he had to take an exam after the book was finished, and he had to pass that exam. He had to pass that exam. And so he was studying that book in a way that would be beneficial to him, which reminds me of you, who talks about studying books, but also talks about listening as if there's a test at the end. It's kind of a combination of two of those things, where you're not just reading the book to read the book, you're reading it to gain the maximum amount of value out of it, and approaching it in a way that's going to actually benefit you. He did mention it takes maybe 3 times as long to finish that book. However, I can guarantee that he takes much more away from that experience than just reading through the pages or going over it quickly without really taking time to ingest and kind of absorb that information.
And I think as long as you come into it with that understanding that, hey, I'm going to study this book and it's going to take 3 or 4 times as long as it probably would take any other normal person reading this, that's okay. As long as you come in, if you can't expect to read a dense book and gather as much information as you possibly can from it in 2 hours, because it just won't happen. You just can't consume all of that. So to take your time, slowly do it, and to read it and then let it rest, and then come back and read it again and take notes, and then those notes become your Spark Notes version of that book, I think it is definitely a good idea. And again, as long as you come at it with a mindset of understanding that this is going to take much longer, but I'm okay with that because I want the information from this book. I don't want to just be able to check off, hey, yeah, I read that book. No, I studied this book. I know the information. I learned from this book. Yes. I think another thing that was really important to me that he said was essentially just take ownership over your choices, right? Every choice is going to have some sort of other end on it. And you can live in a poor me type of mindset, or you can take responsibility for your actions, take ownership over those things that you did learn from your choices, and then allow that learning to inform further choices as you move forward.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it with Kevin, and I'm sure we've talked about it before in the past too. That idea of that ownership of taking control or taking responsibility for what's happening is transformative, because as Kevin said, rather than looking at a situation as, oh, this is something that happened to me, you look at it as, hey, this is something that I made happen through the things that I did or the choices that I made. And if I like the outcome, how can I replicate it? Or if I don't like the outcome, how can I change what I'm doing to avoid that, rather than, sitting back, woe is me, this keeps happening to me. I don't know why my luck is so bad. I don't know why I keep getting dealt a bad hand. You kind of investigate, what's happening, the part you played in getting there. And again, if you want it to replicate or continue, how to do that, or if you want it to stop and to change, how to do that either. But, that step is crucial. And if you can't take responsibility for what's going on in your life, you're just going to you're going to just be at the whims of every up and down and toss and turn that life has to offer you. And, we understand that not everything is within your control. Sometimes things just happen, but the majority of things you can have a little bit of say and a little bit of perspective that can change, that you can interact with that differently and make that a different outcome, or at the very least do something about it. And I think that, it's easier to just sit back and complain than it is to take ownership and control of some of those things, because it requires actual work and it requires actual, consideration for what's happening, and sometimes isn't the easiest thing. However, I think it's crucial in becoming better and taking more control over your life.
And kind of to piggyback on that, a quote that he has is, abundance and scarcity are opposite sides of the same coin. What side are you facing? That is a really interesting perspective on that. And that kind of stems into the NLP talk that you guys did about mindset, and how that shift in mindset really is key to allowing you to move forward in a way that is in accordance with what you want to have happen. It's all just a different perspective of looking at things, and that perspective is so important as you move.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a common theme throughout our whole conversation, was mindset and perspective. And the way you view things, the way you look at things, the way you approach things is gigantic. It makes a huge difference depending on how you approach every situation and every interaction, whether it be business or your personal life or anything that's going on. And so working with Kevin and hearing about Kevin talk about different ways to optimize that mindset and have that abundance perspective, have that winner's mindset was very inspirational. And so that we can all, I think, benefit from not just his conversation with us, but anything that he's doing, whether it be through Optimal Performance Academy or any other project that he might be in. A great example that Kevin's leaving for us on how to approach any situation with a good mindset.
And of course, he talked about, speaking of mindset, talked about seeing your competitors as collaborators. How can you use those competitors to help you and them both gain the upper hand? And part of that is allowing them to collaborate with you. And then another part is he talked about is being the counterbalance to each other. If I'm this way and they're this way, okay, as the consumer, do you want somebody that's like option A, or do you like somebody that's option B? And then they can make an informed decision because we are on the same page, both me and the competitor, which is really certainly a unique way to look at the perspective of a competitor.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're all familiar with the phrase two heads are better than one, but in this perspective, in this realm, of entrepreneurship. What did he call it toward the end? Bypreneurship.
Bypreneurship.
I thought that
Yes.
I chuckled at that because that's us. You and
Yeah.
I were in that bypreneurship with this project here in this podcast. But you know, two heads are better than one is a common phrase that we hear, but it's not something that we always implement. And I think because there are challenges involved with trying to incorporate another person into what you're doing, there are also major benefits. Like you said, you can work off of each other, so you can feed off each other and help each other become better, or you can work opposite of each other. If one person tends to respond to me better, I'll take that through the business. Or if one person tends to respond to you better, you can take that through the business. But we're still working together because we're offering things together as a joint collaboration. And for whatever reason, hearing Kevin talk about that, it's not something that you ever think about or hear very often. People are very set in their ways, and they want to be the one person. They want to have their way of doing things. But you put two people together, you've doubled your offering. You can offer twice as much, or I can offer, I offer this one thing, you offer this other thing. So now we're offering two different things. It doubles how you can service somebody. But then on top of that, your reach is going to be doubled too, because I'm going to reach this many people, or you're going to reach this many people. But that it makes sense. Every way that I can turn it now, it just makes sense. And again, like I said, I feel like you don't hear about that often. And for whatever reason, it seems to be something that people are against. And I'm sure there are difficulties that come with it. But if you can approach it with the mindset that Kevin does, and approach it with that bounty mindset and that winner's mindset, I think it's going to be, it can be very beneficial, and it can be a huge game changer if you're able to work and collaborate with other people. It just makes sense. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but hearing Kevin talk about it, absolutely a great tool, great avenue to at least look into, to see if you can incorporate that in business, especially. But I'm sure that there's some overlap into personal life, as there is with everything.
Well, I think the overlap in personal life is you ask guidance from the people that you have. And maybe moreover than that, two heads are better than one, is you seek out a coach. And that coach helps to play the part of that other person to help to collaborate ideas from. It just happens that as the coaches, they have hopefully been there and done those things and can help guide you through that, so you don't have to fumble around in the dark, because they have the flashlight that they can hand to you. And as far as being maybe even outside of a coach, you just allow the other people that are close to you in, so that they are aware of your perspective on these things. You don't try to hide and deal with everything on your own. No, you let your family in, let your husband and your wife know what's going on, so that they can be on the same page as you, and perhaps give you guidance or a different way of looking at things, because you're stuck in your own head. That's the only thing you can see or even move forward with. But if you seek guidance, if you let other people in, even if it's just your spouse, you let them in, that's a whole nother person. It's a whole nother perspective, a whole nother different set of ideas and notions that they can help you with as you move forward. So even in the personal realm, that is wildly important and helpful and beneficial, all above. Yeah. I think speaking of the Optimal Performance Academy, I thought it was really interesting that he took the book that he had, that was already a book and a workbook, and then he broke that down into courses per chapter. So here's this course, it's this chapter. Here's this course that is this chapter. And of course, he has those courses, but he also has one-on-one coaching that is involved in those as well. So for those individuals that would like more in-depth information, he talked about getting to the nitty-gritty as far as everything that's involved, your company tagline, the color choices, all of those things. I think that is not something that everybody does, but I think that's something that everybody could benefit from, is to have that type of course that they could go through. And again, the thought that he took his book and turned that book into a workbook, and then turned that workbook into a course per chapter. Man, that's such a good idea. Such a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to him noticing a need for something and then providing a solution to that need. And then, like you're saying, he already had the book there. He just worked with what he had and made it more available and more palatable and manageable for anybody that might be seeking that help. And as I mentioned to him in the conversation, I think it's great that he offers so many different types. So you're not just coming to him for one thing. Wherever you're at in your entrepreneurial journey, I'm sure that he has some advice, some tips, some courses that you can learn from, and offering that to anybody who might be interested. I think that's huge, because rather than being pigeonholed in one area, he's able to work with you where you're at and still provide some sort of benefit to anybody at any point in time during a entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, and of course, he talked about learning to invest in yourself, and with that, the concept of, if you go the free route, that free route will end up costing you more. So learn to invest in yourself. Don't think that you can do it all on your own. Have a coach. Have somebody that's there that has done those things, that can help guide you through that. And of course, if the coach is good enough, they're going to be asking you to pay them, because otherwise that free advice is not advice that you're going to listen to. That money component of it really, I think, gives you an opportunity to sacrifice something of yourself, so that you will then listen to what the coach has to say. But if there's no sacrifice, if there's no money involvement there, I think that what the coach is telling you may be wildly important and helpful advice, but you're not going to listen to it the same way, because you're not making any sacrifice to gain that information. So having that coach that you're paying money for is that sacrifice that allow you to listen, to show up and do the things that they ask of you, because you know that you're sacrificing something in order to be there to learn from them. I think maybe that's a unique or different way to look at it, but I think that sacrifice, that money aspect is the important part to that. Yeah. And of course you talked about goal setting and kind of reverse engineering this. You want to take, and we talked about this earlier in the conversation as well, but taking those big type of projects, okay, how can we chunk these down? You take the goal and you chunk it down into smaller, more manageable things. And he talked about SMART goals. And of course, if longtime listeners of our show know that SMART goals are not our biggest thing that we like. And so he talked about having SMART-E goals, and SMART-E goals was specific, measurable, risk. You want to take a risk as you do this. They're relevant, they're time specific, and then the why is for set your why, is for the why are you doing this? Why is this goal important to you? And of course, with the visionary goal framework that we've talked about previously, of course, we have those things built in there. But it is refreshing to hear that other people also are starting to come around, that the SMART goal framework is elementary. And that, in fact, that's the words that he uses. That's elementary school type of thinking. There's much more evolved, better ways of thinking. SMART goals are fine if that's your first step into them. But as you start to learn and grow, there's more different ways to think about how to set goals. And I think that is kind of the importance about this. And then, of course, take those big steps and then move them down into smaller, more manageable things. What do I have to do this month in order to make this yearly goal? And what do I have to do this week? What do I have to do today? And then you work backwards to that, and then that makes it much more manageable, as opposed to thinking about that big number or big whatever it is that's looming overhead. Make it more manageable and break it down into daily or weekly steps.
And most importantly, having the why, and letting the why drive your work, your daily practices, your reason for doing all that stuff. That why is very important. Cannot be understated how important it is to have a reason, a why for doing what you're doing.
And a why that is your own why, not a superficial, because he talked about, most people's whys are BS because it's superficial, it's surface level, but have a why that is actually yours and is meaningful and impactful for you, because without that why, there's no reason to put the work in. There's no reason. With a strong enough why, you can bear any how. That's Nietzsche says that. You can bear any how. So it doesn't matter how hard the work is. If the why is important to you, if you value that why, if it's true to you and who you are and who you want to become, then it doesn't matter the work that's involved for it. You will put the work in because you believe in that why. That why is so strong. So don't, like you said, the why is important, it's impactful. Don't neglect the why. Kind of the last thing that I thought was really interesting for him is he talked about finding a crew, and he didn't necessarily say it in these words, but find your team, find your like-minded individuals, find your crew, and then within them, those are your people. Those are the people that you're working with. Those are the people you're talking to. Interact with them, create friendships and meaningful connections within that crew. Those are your people. Find your people, find your crew.
Make sure you follow us on social media. You can find the podcast at Prestigious Pod.
You can find me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
You can find me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
And if you like our content and would like to subscribe to our email, you can do that via our social media or on the website.
Make sure you also join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
If you would like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life by me, Chris Bean, you can do that by reaching out on one of my social medias or by emailing the podcast at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Those are the points. Make sure you come back next week for even more points and another great conversation. Until next time, I'm Chris Kent.
And I'm Chris Bean.